校卒業時般若波た自証券法案保育同一細工薬者利子式具意空空意識式即税空空即税式重創業式薬部尿税者利子税商法総務商法複分上部増減税国中部式部創業式無限に微別式無式商法未足無限界内し無意識外無無明薬無無明人内し無老死薬無老死人無復讐滅動無知薬無得意無常特攻防大三角アンニャーラミタポシ無定ゲ無定ゲ無空音理祭天道無即行で完全勝物へアンニャーラミタポクラノクタ三脈三宝大高地アンニャーラミタ税大日税大名手税無上手税無東道主農場一切空真実無法説アンニャーラミタ主分節終圧ギャテギャテアギャテアソギャテオリソワカアンニャシンドエガワクワクモクワクオモテヤマネクリサイニオカゴ
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a few newcomers into the temple. They are the multi-headed monster behind the E.Y.E Divine Cybermancy TTRPG, which I will be linking in the Twitch chat in a moment. I don't know why I didn't have it automatically in there. My bad. Oh, and obviously this is the beta for the thing. But we have Amber Ginlet, Big Josh, Ian Duncan, and Lucky Impling here tonight. How are you all doing?
I'm excited. This is so cool to have like even this amount of like talking to anyone outside my circle about the game. It's very exciting. Definitely thought at one point it would just be a for my friends thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an important part of our weekends for quite a while. So it's good to finally get some light on it.
Mm-hmm. So, with that in mind, how long have you guys been working on this?
Oof.
I think I had to run the numbers on that recently for the community spotlight that Strumon did, the developers of the PC game this is based on, for context. And it came out to, I want to say 7 years. But the circle that's been involved in it has grown a little bit over time. But that's when I started it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from concept, it's been a long time.
Yeah, and I think one thing that should be made clear right out of the gate, this has no relation whatsoever to the Ava TTRPG that supposedly birthed I.
It's one of those things that kind of goes around in the community of like, oh, it's a bit of trivia. This was based on the dev team Strumon's tabletop RPG they played.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I know, it's kind of apocryphal. No one outside Strumon has ever seen it, so who knows?
I have my doubts about whether it even exists, given how a lot of the text in I is intentionally incoherent.
I believe something like it does, because when I was going through their website a while ago to look into lore stuff,
mm-hmm.
there's a spot where I think they did some insufficient proofreading, and it mentions when you install Cybernet, and this is like this is a piece of text that was supposed to be all lore, like no mechanics supposed to be in there. It mentions the player makes a Constitution saving throw. I was like, wait a second.
Right.
So
Probably like a modifier for an existing RPG.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, whatever. We have one pretty concrete piece of information about Ava, which is it has a stat called Constitution and it has saving throws.
Yeah.
It's like when people dig up a hip bone of a dinosaur and it's like, okay, we know this and that's it.
We know it's hip bone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, given that, when it comes, obviously when it comes to the universe of I, for the longest time we had just this game and the history and lore involved with it. I know that now we're getting a whole new game that depicts the demon war that was hinted at early on. But was it easy to piece together a timeline of sorts, or did it take a bit of work?
It took some work, but I wouldn't call it work because this is like one of my favorite games of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, especially when I was playing it more heavily, now it's like I've kind of gotten my fill out of it as far as the actual game goes. But when I was, basically took over my mind for a period of time, and I was just like churning ideas around in my head. How did this happen? How did this fit together? What could explain this and that part of the universe?
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of started filling in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that, and it appears to me that for the core mechanic, are you guys using 2d10 in terms of a percentile system, or is it just 2d10 roll high?
That's a sum 2d10, just one die plus the other.
Yep. It's a little unusual.
Mm-hmm.
So the system is in Sword, it's a 2d10, but it's also a d20 system, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want, you could just substitute 2d10 for d20. But for the sort of cyberpunk setting that we're in, we found more modular, sort of granular numbers kind of made a pretty rewarding feel. And having 2d10 means you can kind of count on what the rolls are. You're less likely to have large swings in either direction.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the sort of experience you want with very wide varying swings in RNG, you can definitely sub out 2d10 for d20.
Mm-hmm.
All the math still checks out. It'll just be a little bit more swinging.
Yeah.
And that was actually the reverse of the life cycle we went through. This did actually start as a d20 system,
Mm-hmm.
but we were in a situation where a couple things didn't feel satisfying for us, like how often attacks landed, how they respond to modifiers, which is the biggest impact of 2d10, basically
Mm-hmm.
marginal changes in accuracy, especially when you're moving around the top of that curve.
Mm-hmm.
And we crunched around a couple different solutions and ended up with 2d10, which has felt awesome so far, so we kept it.
Yeah. I can say that I appreciate that when it comes to the skill list, it's a reasonable size. There have been no shortage of cyberpunk games and games that are cyberpunk adjacent that have ridiculously offensive long skill lists, and I'm putting both cyberpunk and Shadowrun in that list.
Yeah. We kind of wanted to avoid that. We've pruned it down actually over the years. This system is super crunchy, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
but we kind of want most of that crunch to be within combat. The main reason we are making a crunchy system is we're all long-standing RPG players,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of got to the point where we wanted the game part of the RPG to really actually make us have to think, not just, I make an attack action, I do the same thing every turn. But that level of depth is mostly focused on the combat. And part of that is just because of the unique nature of this system, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of freedom in how you go about your sort of sessions, but at the end of the day, you are an eye agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not as free form of a character creation. Something kind of like Dark Heresy, where you know what you're making,
Yeah.
And what you are making is very heavily focused on combat. So it kind of let us keep the skill system simple.
And honestly, I appreciate that more because it's a way of reducing analysis paralysis. Like when you
I agree.
Like look at the tumbleweed of the career tree in Warhammer Fantasy, and you'll get kind of an idea of what happens when you say, "Oh, you can be just about anybody."
The naming
That's the thing is when people are playing RPGs, ultimately, there's a few archetypes that they want to fit into, right? And the main thing people are usually doing in RPGs is being like some cool epic hero of some variety. And some people will definitely play an RPG to just do nothing other than make hammers and sell them for a 5 gold markup, right? But if that's the kind of stuff you're looking for, there's like whole systems focused on that, right? And we didn't want that level of depth.
Each system is giving a experience, and the more you focus on this is what we're trying to do and this is what we're trying to do well, the more you can accomplish.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
with being a country system, one thing that's guided my philosophy is like you have the ideas of depth and complexity in a game, right? And generally, if you want it to be deeper, you're going to need to make it more complex as well. But that's not a locked-in linear relationship.
Yes.
You can find bad trades that are a lot of complexity for a little bit of depth, or sometimes even none at all. Or you can find really nice trades that are a little bit more complexity and a ton of depth opens up.
Oh, yeah.
So saying I'm going to make a crunchy game is not an excuse to let it all hang out, be super bloated. It's more like you have to keep an eye out for any bit of efficiency you can gain.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
definitely been something we've been focusing on.
Yeah, the reason I've picked on those really long skill lists is you have huge swaths of those skills that end up being extremely situational, and you only have so many points to put in skills. That's one as odd as this may sound, sometimes skill systems, when you have that huge variety, can be more restrictive than I think a lot of people are willing to admit. You know, the
I've definitely run into that. To use the example you gave earlier, actually, I was not like recently, but like a while ago, I was in I think it's called Cyberpunk Red, right? That's the current name for whatever.
Yeah.
And I ran into the problem where my character just couldn't be passably good at all the things they would reasonably be good at because of how many skills there were for things that are like so niche. I know with our skill system, I think the big thing was just making sure the things you would actually want to roll for to have a success or failure chance exist. But overall, like as Ian has said, and also like Impling, a lot of the crunch is in the combat.
Yeah, and there's some things that are conspicuously missing from the skill list just because my philosophy doesn't say there's something that should be rolled for. Like intimidation, for example. I don't feel the need to roll for that. If you're some massive guy in power armor with a huge weapon and you're trying to get a civilian to obey you through fear, I don't need to roll for that. Come on.
If that's
and if you really do need to roll, there's diplomacy. You know, there are social skills.
Yeah.
Aggressive diplomacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes certain actions can be folded into other skills. Like, I think we were past the point where we need to have a separate skill for running, jumping, climbing, and swimming.
It's a very classic 90s-ism.
I think some systems, like Call of Cthulhu, has a decent example for a lot of skills done decently. Because the skills are everything in that game, right? Like, your ability to do combat is a skill. Like, it's just punching the skill. And that's kind of what the character's supposed to be, right? Like, when you're designing your Call of Cthulhu character, you're thinking about, like, what do I do as my 9 to 5, right? So, in that sort of scenario, it's pretty good. But I think we even have less than something like 5e, right? Because 5e has more exploration elements, more like open world elements.
Well, it claims to. But that's
Right.
another
I mean, ideally it should, right? Like the world of like a fantasy world, right?
Mhm.
Or even like a normal cyberpunk world would have a lot of open elements. In this case, it's less so, right? And
Yeah.
of course that's up to the DM.
Mhm.
But I mean, with I, you are being sent out on missions, right? And it's very freeform in how you do those missions, but you know what you're signing up for, right? You're gonna go fight some Metastroms, take out some feds,
Yeah.
deal with the
I just wanted
syndicate.
to ask this, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who watching who might or may not be too familiar with I, do you want me to talk super briefly about what the premise of the game is?
Yeah, I think we can go through that elevator pitch before I get into my next question.
Yeah, I can spark note it pretty well. So it is the relatively near future, the around 2400,
Mhm.
and humans are scattered around many different planets through FTL technology, but it is a bad situation. Human civilization has been assailed repeatedly by monsters sent by a universal force called the Metastromonic Force, mainly putting out things that would be seen as demons. And what's left is ruled mostly by a oppressive military dictatorship called the Federation. You, however, are not directly related to either of those. You're part of a organization of cybernetically enhanced warrior monks called E.Y.E, who are actually made from genetic material taken from the Metastromonic Force itself. And your mission is basically to fight back against the Force, protect humanity, and carry out the will of your masters, which are a mysterious group called the Secreta Secretorum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was nicely put.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's certainly a lot more, and you have a whole timeline chapter within, and there's plenty of lore material beyond that.
I think that would give someone a good idea in
Yeah.
30 seconds what it is about.
Yeah. But with that in mind, I'm going to be drawing parallels to a lot of cyberpunk meets fantasy games because that is one of the more obvious parallels here.
Of course,
And
yeah.
that brings me to the concept of doing classes, which
Okay.
is a very deliberate choice. A lot of games that do this sort of thing, that do this sort of cyberpunk meets fantasy, want to go full freeform.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in this case, you guys went with a class system. Was some of that just emulating source material, or was some of it trying to avoid that same analysis paralysis?
So there's a couple factors there. First off, this is not the biggest thing, but it did kind of lead me in that initial direction, kind of like a first nudge.
Mhm.
There is a quote class system in I, but it's basically just giving you a title just for flavor, no mechanics, based on your stat distribution.
Mhm.
Like if you have your hacking highest, calls you a hacker. You have your Cyforce highest, calls you a psyker, so on. But it's just a title. And those form the start of the classes I laid out for the game, but I wanted to, give them actual abilities and mechanics, obviously. And I had seen more freeform examples in other games I'd played at that point. Dark Heresy would be a big example. There's a lot of DNA there, and we can maybe get into that later. But I'm very proud of the way with each of the classes, their abilities fit together, and I wanted to be able to put out that, like, this is your move set, so to speak. And there's some ways that kind of relates to a fighting game character,
Mhm.
or to use an example there. So
Yeah.
a kit that really interlocks and its abilities support each other and build into a game plan
Mhm.
is kind of what I was going for.
That's we actually had a debate around this, whether we go more feat focused or if we go individual classes. In the end, we have no feats. Your main choices obviously are your class
Mhm.
and then equipment. the classes ended up being kind of like this without choices, mostly because it allowed us to balance them in a way that is consistent, like internally. So one of the big issues with those free-form feat-based, sort of like Dark Heresy style games is you really can make terrible characters,
Yeah,
and you also can make really good ones.
Yeah, it's the
And-
beginner's trap kind of thing, or what we call hand
Yeah.
breaking.
Yeah, so like if you wanted to play, I mean, this game is already pretty crunchy. So admittedly, most of the people playing this are probably they have some experience with other RPGs, tabletop board games, something like that, or just video games, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even with that said, I much preferred being able to make all of the abilities key in together. Like you'll see if you look at the classes,
Mm-hmm.
a huge amount of the abilities have different sort of interactions with an entire toolkit, right? More like an RPG character. The idea there being, if we want combat to be really, really interesting, we need to give you a lot of interesting interplay between your abilities.
Mm-hmm.
If they're all their own sort of separate part, then yeah, it gives you a lot more character sort of free-form building, but that kind of plays back into our discussion on skills, where the main focus of this game is, you know what you are, let's make the combat interesting, let's make your fighting style interesting, let's make that your main choice in how you sort of interact with the game world.
Mm-hmm.
Another big thing going on is when it comes to playing RPGs, there's a lot of it comes down to the balance between the decisions you make before the session and the decisions you make during the session.
Mm-hmm.
So like building your character a certain way so you can do certain things versus you run into a situation and you decide how to deal with it.
Right.
My preferences generally lead me to value decisions during the session
Yeah.
a lot more. So I find that sometimes when people are talking about a game, they say, "Oh, you have a lot of character freedom, a lot of choice in this game."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, you do before the session, but it's all in the service of making your character really good at one button, and you're going to click that button over and over again."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that's bad. It is a preference thing. It's definitely not my preference. So
Yeah,
what I was really going for was, you have these tools, they're set in stone, but time to figure out how you're going to use them.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm perfectly fine with. I've obviously when it comes to feats, perks, whatnot, there is the issue of false choice that can happen. You're not picking things level to level freely. You're doing so because there's a certain thing you're looking to get, and you need to go through these steps to get it. And
Yeah.
you have
Pathfinder feat chains, man. Oh man.
Whirlwind Attack has been my whipping boy for this exact reason. Since
Yeah.
since if you remember the amount of stuff that you need to get in advance to get Whirlwind Attack, which is
Yeah,
basically
and all
spin-
of the stuff is terrible except Whirlwind Attack. Like
Yeah.
none of it's interesting, none of it's relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
It's like the,
I will say,
yeah.
as someone who has played a lot of other RPGs, I still have the curse of I will consistently make an absolute dog water terrible build the first time I go to any RPG. Even when I'm like good at assessing a system, I'll still step in that bear trap every single time.
Yeah.
So
There's
I
also
was
a lot of
not
players
complaining
who just,
about the class system.
yeah, there's also a lot of players who just don't do that, right? They don't really think about the balance of their character outside of flavor. So you can run into a lot of problems with.
I
a
blame
very-
Monty Cook.
Ooh. Let's in the interest of keeping this discussion at least reasonably positive, we'll
Yeah.
leave it there.
But the thing, I think when it comes to it, I know that a lot of folk have this mindset of, oh, classes are too limiting, but
Hmm.
I think that comes from not looking at the full picture when it comes to the idea of a character class, because I think they're thinking of one game when they view that, but there's a lot of different ways that it can be done that allow for that. And
Yeah, and every game is going to handle classes differently.
yeah. And I think it was an interesting and informed choice for the fact that you don't start out with any class. Classes, as I understand it from what I'm looking at this, are more of a specialization, because you don't start getting class stuff until level 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it'll.
So the system is sort of one of the things we wanted to have happen is the complexity of the system doesn't just come from your class features; it comes from things you can just do.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're making abilities, if we ever are sort of asking ourselves, is there a situation where I would reasonably say, why can't I just do this? We probably should just be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of, in the end, kind of tried to keep a lot of the core combat quite interesting. Like, you have maneuvers, dodges, parries, psi abilities, trick shots, all these sorts of different varied ways that you can interact with the combat sandbox outside of the class system.
Mm-hmm.
And it is also it's somewhat recommended for, so like, let's say you came back to the game, you can just start at a higher level, right? Like, if you wanted to do another session, you could start that session at level 3, right, when you get the first classes. But starting before level 3 without the classes allows you to get a grasp on all of those core systems before you sort of add even more complexity.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely our way of onboarding. Basically, get a handle on the universal rules before you start worrying about class coming in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I'm very proud of, it's not like levels 1 and 2 are boring. I've run them. That gameplay can be fun for a decent amount of time. Until you start getting class.
Yeah, we had many sessions. It was quite good.
Mm-hmm.
And by the same token, even just having 1 or 2 class abilities can do a lot.
Oh, yeah.
We've done some playtesting, one-shot combat scenarios with level 3 and 4 characters, and the amount of decision making, I was playing one of the classes, the amount of decision making with just 2 class abilities and the universal basic kit was I had to stop and think for a couple of times, which I'm really proud of.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I can definitely see that in this, especially given the fact that with a lot of the actions, when it comes to that action economy, for starters, it's that whole, you're choosing between half or full actions, and a lot of them are more hingent on the core stats, with skills making things a little bit easier, but the core stat is one of the key aspects of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Which makes it fairly easy to get the point across in terms of what somebody should probably invest. Like, if they're going to be focusing on combat a lot, they're probably going to be putting a good amount of points in weaponry. If they're focusing on psychic bullshit, they're probably going to put a bunch of points in Psi-Force. If and when I looked at the skill list, I didn't see any skill that could have the nickname of the god skill per se. The closest to that would be intelligence. But
in terms of the skills or the base characteristics?
The skills.
Okay.
And even then, it's not like that particular attribute is as much of a god stat as I've seen in some systems. And I will clarify what I mean by a god stat is a particular core attribute that plays into a bunch more skills or secondary attributes compared to like how dexterity cascades into just about everything.
AC to hit, damage, most of the best skills in the game, the most important saving throws. Yeah, it's ranged and melee to hit and damage, by the way. It's definitely a lot.
It's always been a very important thing for all of us to not have any god stats
Yeah.
like that either.
Well, so there's some obvious, like, when you're choosing your character, there's some obvious skills you're gonna want, right? If you're playing a warrior, you're gonna want to put some points into your weapon skill and your strength. Okay, that's just obvious. But what we kind of wanted is the choice to become, what do you invest your other points in? Obviously, you're gonna want to keep those going up. But like, are you a warrior with a few drones and some hacking abilities? Do you spice up your combat with a bit of gunplay? Do you use psi powers? Or do you want to be really, really fast and agile? Like, you can build into all of those different abilities, and there's a lot of choice to be made when it comes to those sort of abilities. That's where most of the character expression you would normally see in feats comes from, is weapons and equipment and spells, because in our system, all of those pretty fundamentally change the way that you interact with combat. It's not going from a D10 to a D8.
Yeah, and you made the battlefield commander that was a warrior with enough int to be backed up by some androids, and it was sick.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do love the warlord / martial tactician archetype in games. The person who doesn't hit you with his weapons, he hits you with the rest of the party.
Yes.
Yeah.
But since you brought
That's
up
always
hacking,
really fun, yeah.
Since you brought up hacking, let's address that particular elephant in the room that's decided to break into my temple and crash on my couch.
I'm so excited.
So, I am no stranger to hacking in cyberpunk and science fiction games. And
So what
this
is
is one of those things that when it gets brought up, you get some people who get excited and some people who groan. Hacking has a bit of a reputation. And a lot of that reputation is due to those 90s isms, I guess we'll call it, where hacking becomes this duet between player and GM. Now, I, of course, had its own interesting form of hacking, where hacking becomes almost this ATB like combat system a la early Final Fantasy. But obviously that would be difficult to do in a tabletop game. So how are you handling hacking while still keeping it familiar to I?
Hey, Amber, you want to take this one? By the way, I'll just say we're audio only, but if you could see me, I would be smiling and pumping my fist right now. I'm so glad to talk about this hacking game.
Yeah, I've got my head in my hands because I'm the hacker playtester. So in our RPG, hacking is rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock with the GM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Specifically, you do a series. You each set up a series of viruses corresponding to rock, paper, scissors, etc., and then reveal.
Yes.
Yeah, reveal all of those at once,
Mm-hmm.
and that will affect two stats. Your virus power, which is sort of your attack, and your firewall, which is your flat damage reduction. And then you just clash those stats against each other, and that will reduce your sort of health for that hacking called core.
Mm-hmm.
And you will keep doing, like, as turns go by or as clashes go by, you will keep doing these rock, paper, scissors duels to determine how you manipulate your stats and then continue clashing.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of sort of opponent you're facing can also like vastly determine what strategies you want to use. Against like a weaker opponent, it would be you would probably just want to put everything into attack to finish it as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And also a weaker opponent would generally be played by the GM using a lot more basic and predictable sequences of rock, paper, scissors, possibly even like a set one they don't deviate from. Whereas against a tougher opponent with stats more on par with the hackers, you might want to like pump up your defense a little bit to make sure that you don't lose a bunch of health in like the first couple of duels and stabilize the situation and then go on the offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, one of
Clarify there.
the go ahead.
The 5 viruses that make up the rock, paper, scissors pentagram, you could say, they're called attack, overflow, scan, mask, and shield.
Mm-hmm.
So the way it works is 2 of those are considered offensive, that's attack and overflow. 2 of those are considered defensive, scan and mask, and then, or excuse me, shield and mask. Scan is kind of a hybrid.
Yeah.
So depending on which of these you win with, they'll either boost your offense or defense, and scan is like a freebie. You can split it between. So you're trying to counter your opponent and also choose your approach and what you need more at that moment.
Oh yeah.
It should be said as well that those who, especially those who have enjoyed Divine Cybermancy, and especially the hacking in that game, will be quite familiar with the system. It is very similar to as it worked in the game, and it's been done very well in that sense.
It's quite nice. One of the core focuses we had on the system was how does it interact with the rest of the game. One of the things I know a lot of cyberpunk RPGs are infamous for is, all right, the hacker's doing his thing, go take an hour-long break while he and the GM, as you say, have a duet.
Yeah.
And that, so out of combat, there will be events when you might want to, wait and let your hacker do a hack. It shouldn't take that long. Most hacks typically are resolved pretty quickly. But in terms of in combat especially, that's the last thing you want. So it does flow quite nicely. I would honestly liken it to just having like a rogue in your party. Occasionally, yes, the rogue will go forward and scout ahead, right? But that's not going to disrupt the entire sequence of play. The same thing kind of goes for how does hacking interact with you if you're not a hacker, but there are enemy hackers. It's quite interesting the way that it designs the sort of combat. The hacking can be quite bad, right? If you don't have any defense or any intelligence or any sort of ability to fend for yourself, obviously that's not a great scenario to be in. You can end up in a pretty bad way, but that sort of takes time. So the hacking defense in that sort of sense almost just becomes a race to find and kill the hacker, which is something that's made quite interesting by E.Y.E's very unique sort of depiction of the cyberspace, where it's sort of a very localized cloud of nanomachines that sort of create, well, the cloud, quite literally. But as a result of that, all the hacking is very close range only. So like shorter range than most firearms even is hacking. So it's very interesting being in the bottom of a federal complex and suddenly having a hack light up on your cyber brain and just frantically tearing through walls to try and find them. But at the core of it, the system it's like everybody said, it's very simple.
Yeah.
And there's some, I guess, inspiration there, having those types of encounters from one of my all-time favorite series. Guys, we have to find and kill the enemy stand user before our eyeballs fall out of our heads or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very much like I've got to find the closet this guy is hiding in before he turns my legs off and I can't move.
Yeah, we had to bring up the whole "my legs are okay."
Of course.
But speaking of that, one of the other big pillars when it comes to advancement is research. The whole research tree, getting briefcases, which you can spend brews off to start a research project and spend more to speed it up. Obviously, we're not dealing with the same sense of time that the video game is dealing with. But do you plan on having something akin to the research tree?
So currently, not really. But also yes, which isn't a very helpful answer, right? So the research tree as it's presented in the game is a very single player focused functionality. It's sort of a collect them all single player-esque function. One of the issues we have run into with bruise-offs and with gear and equipment acquisition in general is if gear is acquired with money, with bruise-offs, in the same way as it is in the game, then why don't you just go rob a bank and buy everything immediately? The thing is, right, E.Y.E agents are using the same weapons other agents or other people are using, right? That's a function of the game that we have to stick with. If you pick up a gun, it could have easily have been used by a federal infantryman or just a looter, right?
Oh yeah.
But that gun is also part of your character creation and character progression. So how do you price that? How do you price a Damocles every federal officer has if it's supposed to be a decently like mid-tier weapon, right? And as a result, you have to kind of depart from the traditional way that it works in the game with acquiring bruise-offs and getting research to get upgrades. There is absolutely a sort of tiered unlock system, though, of equipment. It is sort of in the works. Weapons have their tiers and everything sorted like that. But the actual method of acquisition is something we'd be going back and forth on for a little while. Less so how they're acquired and more so what we want to make the terminology. Because bruise-off is an iconic term, right? It's iconic for the game. So we want to include that. We just have to figure out a way to differentiate from bruise-off being used to buy a Big Mac and being stored in a bank, and bruise-off being the main source of character progression outside of your actual level.
Yeah.
And part of the in-universe logic this is running on is thinking about, okay, how does I, as a fighting organization, run? When you're an I agent going out on missions, you're taking from a shared armory. So there's the idea of, okay, the temple collectively has these weapons at its base, probably more common weapons, fewer, stronger, rare weapons, and some ammo and other gear for you. And the armory is being maintained for the good of the order as a whole. So there's certain levels of equipment that they're going to trust you with, which is going to be less as a new agent than as an experienced agent. So that idea of rising in the ranks in I also contributes to your progression.
Yeah. And I suppose one potential route is to take a kind of requisition approach or gate it behind skills. You already have the tier set up with hacking, where you need a certain number of points in hacking in order to use certain tiers of equipment. It probably wouldn't be too much of a stretch to carry that over.
Yeah, we do have weapon tiers already, mercifully. We sort of have something similar with like level gating and the requisition system, sort of dual part. Because gaining sort of requisition quote unquote points it's a rewarding feeling, it's a nice feeling, especially since we don't have feats, right? That's the main part of customizing your character. Obviously, your class at level 3 is the main choice. But once you've chosen your class, I mean, you've chosen your class, right? You need a whole new character, basically. The equipment we did want to have sort of be an interesting requisition sort of style thing. It's just, unfortunately, that comes at the cost of the iconicness of Bruise-Off. Though it's not going away entirely.
Yeah.
It's just we really did not want to encourage I agents just landing down on a planet and immediately robbing every bank that there is. Now you can buy an ion cannon for every member of the group and blow up a Deus Ex, and that's not the goal.
I'll say that there are certain things that work better for a video game and better for a tabletop game.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I also think that for a large part, we kind of more or less, if not know exactly how we want it to work, we have a lot of good ideas. It's just, this is very finicky and has to be tuned very carefully.
We even have like a fully priced out, tiered out list of items and where you go and how you get them at each level. The question is more so how we implement that in terms of flavor.
Yeah.
That's mostly just been what's up in the air.
Yeah, and since I brought up the whole psychic bullshit, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about Psy. And how you guys plan on handling it. It does appear that it is going to be on a point-based approach. You are using energy with it, but is it a case where it is fire and forget, or are you gonna have to roll to cast before you use the effect?
So, pretty much all psi powers, with some exceptions, will both cost energy, which is not just used for psi powers, used for a ton of things. Basically, any action that has a cost to it. Lots of class abilities, activated effects on cybernetics, things like that. So they will cost energy and take a roll. If it's an offensive power, this is basically the attack roll, or just to make the effect go off.
Which I can certainly get that.
Yeah, basically actions you can take. These just happen to depend on your psi.
Yeah, there are a few psi powers that do not require any sort of roll, but they are less common.
And when it comes to acquiring them, is it a case of taking a psi adjacent class and getting access to certain levels of powers?
So the psi powers, some classes do have class features that give you powers. But those powers are not restricted to those classes. That's just more of a, this power is extremely good for the class. Either here's that as a freebie with a little bit else, or if you already have that power, get another one. But psi, so for starters, you know a number of powers equal to your psi stat, right? So anybody can invest in the psi stat and get better at using those powers. Obviously, a class like Adept is going to have a lot more ability to use those powers effectively, class features. But powers are usable, like even the highest level powers are usable by anybody in the game if you just choose to invest in that. The sort of psi abilities themselves are acquired basically through that similar rec system, is the idea. Originally, you just kind of got them every time you gained points in psi. But increasingly, when faced with itemization choices, it became apparent that you'd want the sort of mage players to sort of go through this sort of training idea. Because if you're having a system with very important itemization, right, for main character expression, and your warrior can choose his weapon and tinker with it and put all these attachments on it, and your sniper can do the same with theirs, and you're stuck there with no choice, basically, and a bunch of empty rec points to waste on, I don't know, I guess, grenades you'll never use. That was kind of an issue we ran into. So they're going to be acquired through that similar requisition system, right, where you go back to the temple and you're now considered worthwhile enough to be given the investment of training in these new abilities.
And sometimes when I feel like it's within the flow of the session, because we have more RP-based sessions at the temple, I'll narrate a scene with the player in question of how psi training might work, because I like getting creative with how the agents are trained in each power. Like, for example, I think I did something like, oh, you want to learn geokinesis, you go to this part of the temple with the psi instructor, and they liquefy the concrete under you and sink you up to your neck and basically get out. So that's a fun example there.
Yeah.
And to address your initial question as well, if this wasn't implied by what Ian was talking about, part of the lore is that every agent in I is psychically capable as a result of their augmentations. It's just a matter of which ones choose to invest into it more or less.
Right.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. I think for me it's more a mix of a couple questions that have more or less been answered. One of them, the whole fire and forget thing. Some of that is already addressed with the fact that there are variations on what can be done with it based on how many points you have in certain attributes, but also ensuring that the possibility of someone going what's known as the Gish route, if they wanted to, would be relatively easy.
Definitely, and I mean, if you look at the Warlock class, that's basically what that is. It's using melee weapon combat and psi powers together.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a good example of your class giving you... Actually, I'm sorry. I'm not going to go down that road because that's from an older version of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The Warlock still exists. It's just there's no reason to give it Psi Blast for free because every character just innately has Psi Blast now. Because it seems a very instinctive power. You just throw it out and do some damage with it.
Yeah, it's basically the first ability that you learn when focusing your Psi Force in your initial eye train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is just throw out a mass of energy.
Yeah, it's so it's a case
But yeah,
of-
to answer
Go ahead.
the Guiche question, everyone can to some extent. It's just obviously some classes are specifically designed to enable that even more.
Mhm.
Yeah, like with a very simple example of a class feature, the Warlock class, which is basically the melee and psi class, they specialize in that. They're not the only one who can, but they specialize in it.
Mhm.
Their level 3 is straight up, when you take the attack action, you may spend some energy to cast a psi power as a free action.
Mhm.
Whereas like a warrior would be able to attack twice, now you can attack and cast a spell. So yeah, some classes will be better at it, but anybody can do that. And it's often quite useful, especially for utility and out of combat function.
Mhm.
Yeah, and to be clear, in that example, obviously the Warlock is better at both keeping up their melee offense and casting psi powers in that scenario than the warrior would be. But it's by no means would you feel redundant as a warrior for also having psi powers.
Yeah, like the actual casting,
Mhm.
if you cast the same spell with the same stat, much of the effect is going to be exactly the same. It's just a question of how does that trigger in with all of your other abilities, and how much are you going to focus on doing that?
Mhm. And it definitely sounds like each individual psi power is almost a small package of effects rather than a one-off.
Some of them more than others, but yeah, there's a lot of examples of that. Like pyrokinesis, for example. Okay, you can throw out a fireball.
All
But
the
if there's
kinesis,
fire-
yeah.
Yeah, if there's fire already on the ground, you can manipulate it or make it flare up for more damage.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, if you've got more points inside, there's more stuff you can do with these sort of things.
Yeah.
And even with that, there is still the relative risk of miscasting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
Mm-hmm. Which,
The miscasts aren't super like horribly punishing. It's not quite
it's not
40K
Tales of
here,
the
right?
Warp.
yes, your brain does not explode immediately. I mean, that is a potential.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be almost impossible to miscast to that extreme. The idea of miscast is more so for some random interesting quirks, almost like the wild magic table from 5e.
Yeah.
For the most part, that's what you'll be seeing. But if you're fighting some parapsychic legionaries, some fed anti-psychic troops, right, and they hit you with curse grenades, and you're trying to do an unshackled casting and yada yada yada, things get pretty hairy, for sure.
The worst result on there you can probably see in normal gameplay is called mirrored power, which is basically the power goes off with its effect reversed.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
for a simple damaging power, okay, now it's aimed at you, but there are some things that are a lot weirder there. I don't think I've had to yet decide on the fly what mirrored power precognition looks like. I think you pretty much have to read Dune to figure that one out.
yeah. Yeah, you hand somebody a copy of the first book of Dune, and you say that's what happens.
Figured out Leto Atreides.
Yeah.
But even now, one of the things I am curious about is in some games that have these sort of systems, there's the opportunity to overpay for powers, spells, what have you, to boost the effect. Do you guys have anything like that, or is that something that's being discussed?
There's
Yes
a couple
and no.
examples. We one recent example we run into was chain lightning
Mhm.
being one power, and you can keep pouring energy into it to keep the lightning bolt arcing.
Mhm.
But that's one thing that I try to watch out for pretty strongly, because that can kind of funnel a character into just doing this one thing every time. If they can dump their whole energy bar, get a big effect. Yeah, it's dumping their whole energy bar, but look what it's doing. And
The Nova effect.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I
You
try
just
to
do that, then rest, and do that, then rest.
I try to keep a tight lid on that, because something like energy is at its best when it's being spent in varied ways, and you have a whole ecosystem of things pulling at it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there is that thing I touched on a little bit with the unshackled casting, which basically it doesn't directly empower your abilities, but it allows you to have a higher chance of casting them. It directly influences your casting roll as well as your miscast. So if you are trying to get off a high level ability, that is one thing that you can do with unshackled casting.
Mhm.
And some of the classes also have some abilities to sort of their psi powers as well, like Adept and Warlock.
Mhm. I could definitely see that. Now, on the enemy side of things, obviously this is something that's gonna be in development for a while. But when it comes to designing the opposing side of things, do you guys plan on putting in a full bestiary?
Oh yeah,
Yep.
we have a threat manual.
Mhm.
The main reason we haven't shared it today is just because the formatting is covered in highlights, sticky notes, everything like that, right?
Yeah.
We prettied up this document to make it sort of readable for other people, but it is still an in-progress game, and the bestiary or the threat manual needs a bit more prettying. But we have fully fleshed out enemy factions for the Metastrooms, for the criminal syndicates, for looters, for the federal army, the federal cops, vehicles, all the sort of things. That's one thing that sort of everybody in this call has contributed to a pretty good amount. It's quite nice. We look forward to sharing that, but it does need to be prettied up first.
Yeah,
It
it's
does, although I will say
slightly-
Josh did an amazing job making a more readable version of the template than we were originally using, and that has helped a ton.
Oh yeah. It's slightly behind the player-facing rules in terms of development, to the point where it's good enough for me. I can run sessions with it as the system founder and so far only GM, but it's not something that I want other people to rely on. It can be refined a little bit better.
Yeah, we would like to neaten it. That's another thing we want to do is actually make a GM's guide, beyond just a monster manual and a player's handbook. Like, here, let's give you some tips on how to design encounters, because it is somewhat of an atypical game. You almost have to think about it from the GM perspective, almost like you're making a war game army. Because you are a super soldier, right? You fight a lot of enemies, and you will kill a lot of enemies.
So, given that, are you building around like a encounter budget of a sort when it comes to building encounters?
I
I can talk about this one actually.
I generally go more fiction first on that kind of stuff. Like, okay, the player's objective is taking them to this federal base. What do I think is the garrison of this base? What would they have? How many of them would be there? And put that down. If it's too tough for them at that point, all right, figure out some way to
that
deal
is
with
something we plan on doing, though. Is adding like a sort of quote unquote CR mechanic, just something that's less requirement, more, hey, here's a suggestion of what this can do, especially for people who aren't as familiar with E.Y.E, who don't necessarily know what all the Metastrooms can do, or just in general, we want to have a sort of suggestion of power. But yeah, like David said, it's definitely up to personal choice how you design encounters, right?
Yeah.
One of the guidelines that is still being refined a bit, but is sort of proposed in the GM's guide, is sort of kind of a like rule stick for the GM to use in terms of like what does the tiers of response from the local force look like? Like what do the federal police
Right.
like? How do they escalate? How do the federal army escalate? How does the Metastromonic force escalate? And that can kind of provide not necessarily a CR, but like when like something happens, the alarms are going off, and like everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Like what enemy reinforcements are going to be showing up? How many? What order?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And even at a high level, if you're on some little back world, honestly, the first level of response might be just a few cops and some cop cars showing up. And they're not going to really do anything to you, right? But maybe you're on that federal backworld because of a secret federal base, and eventually they send the sort of black hats after you, and that becomes a whole lot scarier. But in general, from all the levels, you will see that sort of range of power. You'll definitely run into encounters where it's just you supersede the necessity to really roll out the combat. But
There's a
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Please continue, and then I had something I wanted to add.
Yeah, so it's kind of just set up in a way that, like, if I have an objective to take out a federal nuclear reactor, I might just be mowing through little shitter infantry guardsmen for a while, and then eventually, like, I'm gonna have to figure out how to deal with the interceptor that they've sent after me. Like, there's an actual just attack helicopter flying me down right now, and that's a big deal. So you sort of see an escalation in difficulty depending on how much you fucked up, or honestly just depending on the mission, right? Some missions you might not have stealth as an option. Like, you might just have to full send break into a maximum security facility, and it's just rip and tear from the beginning.
So there's definitely an idea of that extraction type of gameplay, since the party is by nature, based on what they are, going to be a small but powerful force against generally a much larger force, whether that's a horde of metastromonic creatures or large units from the federal army. So there's that idea. A lot of the missions, like, as far as narrative structure goes, do tend to be pretty get in, do the objective, skedaddle. I do love that scene in a lot of action movies where you make it into the bad guy's base, you're doing well so far, and you're trying to make it out, and you realize, oh, one of them got on the radio.
Yep.
But it's a case where, to some extent, I've been prompted to grow past my own instincts as a GM, because when I've GM'd not just this game, but other ones, if I have good intuition on the world, scenario, setting, I feel pretty comfortable just putting together an encounter with minimal guidance. But for this to be a system that other people would use, I can realize that a lot of people would want more guidance than that, hence the encounter building guide.
Right.
Yeah. And to that end, since this kind of premise lends itself very well to mission design, do you plan on putting something like a random mission generator to help GMs get the ball rolling, in a sense?
Not necessarily like a random mission generator, but something I've definitely already started working on and am laying out blueprints to like develop more on is definitely like sample missions. Like, here are the general kinds of like basic errands low-level I agents might be asked to run on.
Yeah.
Here are the kinds of things like you might run into on them, like, or just things like, hey, if your I agents manage to, like, I don't know, cosplay as like looters or something, the escalation will probably happen a lot slower, so you should use like this chart instead of that chart, that kind of thing. So we're definitely giving them sort of not necessarily like a full-blown module, but like if a GM wants to just use sample in like missions and encounters for the first couple of sessions, that's definitely going to be something available to them, not just thrown into the deep end.
I think they'll start to give them a good sense of what I is about, and then think on what are the things happening elsewhere in space and what the agents are going to be called upon to do.
Right.
So I think it's important to lay that out so that people don't get too tempted to just rehash some of the missions or encounters from the video game.
Yeah, that's one thing we've kind of almost strictly avoided, especially with sort of the story of the video game is very insular, right? It's a very personal experience to the specific player protagonist.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to just like, you can't base the RPG off of the full events of that game, right? You have to differentiate between the things that make up I and the things that make up Feverish Dreams.
Yeah, we don't want every campaign to be focused on the cycles of guilt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, even the cynical is like a weird spot in that, right? Because it's supposed to be his wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's also one of like the core enemy types. So what, does everybody just look like some dude's wife in I? And the ultimate answer is, I guess so. Because they thankfully they also look like I priests, so you can kind of hand wave it with that. But yeah, there's some interesting repercussions from the fact that the story is so personal.
Mm-hmm.
Our relationship with the whatever you can glean from the existing game's lore is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One goal I set for myself when I started this, the campaign specifically, and I think I've done a good job with, was this will not be Rimina's Bizarre Adventure. Like, there is an element here of, I guess you could say, collaborative fan fiction. Like, what do I personally think is the fundamental thing going on in this universe, and, you know, having my party explore that with me. But again, it's collaborative. I'm not going to be a write a book GM. They are shaping the story as well, and kind of seeing based on these events going on what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which certainly makes sense, and given all the history just before you get to where you are in the game, there's already a lot of wiggle room to support that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's best to avoid the cycles of guilt story simply because that is very insular, that is very personal to that story, and it sounds like what you guys want to present is more of I as an organization and the sandbox within that, rather than the story of one agent.
Yeah, exactly.
This kind of touches as well on my thoughts on what makes a setting good for an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that means it needs to have the potential for a lot of different characters to be moving things, to be agents. And when people go for certain settings in other media, like I want to officially or unofficially make this an RPG,
mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't see that they'd be immediately conducive, and not that that's guaranteed to be bad, but I don't see the potential there. Something like, I've heard of a Dune RPG, and I'd be curious how that plays, but my kind of first thought was, what are you doing in Dune if you're not an Atreides or Harkonnen?
Right.
That's already been addressed.
You're not a main character.
That's already been addressed twice, and since Dune 2 is one of the godfathers of the RTS genre, there's enough material there. I would say a much bigger example would be, it'd be easy to write a Dark Souls RPG, and there have been ones that have done that.
Many.
It would be more difficult to write a Sekiro RPG, because how do you do Sekiro and not be the wolf?
Yeah. Ian and I are...
how do you do it as not a Ronin?
Yeah.
Like, you don't.
Ian and I are big Stormlight heads,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I can immediately see the hook. Like, okay, you're not Kaladin. You can be other Windrunners.
Oh.
Yeah, even then, I still probably, like, a Stormlight RPG, I can see how you could make it, and I know that there have been some made.
We're getting
but I can
them now
imagine
with the Cosmere thing, but I think when it comes to that, the way it gets around that issue is having a direct line with the author.
That is true.
That's definitely gonna help.
Because nothing officially Cosmere can blink or sneeze without Sanderson knowing about it and giving his stamp on it.
Yeah.
Oh. Which I think it's the reason why he prefers writing his own stuff versus writing stuff for other people. I remember him talking about doing a story for Magic the Gathering, but he didn't like the experience. It sounds like he's not going back. I don't know how he felt about writing for Infinity Blade, because
Funny, because that's the only thing that George R. write for other people.
yeah, although
I guess Anderson did the opposite.
a friend of mine, when he finished his fantasy series, wrote a note in the back of the last book saying, "To George R.R. Martin, see, it's not that hard."
Oh man.
Oh
Is
man.
that
That's
petty?
perfect.
Yes. Is it funny? Also yes.
Yeah, fuck George. I don't. Screw that guy.
He's getting too much money from the TV show. What can you do?
True. True.
That's what I'd
the
like
truth of
to.
it.
I'd like to blame his inability to write Winds of Winter on the TV show, but this has been a problem for long before that.
It's true.
Yeah,
It's
it is
actually
also
that
true.
really highlights the scale of how long it's been, huh?
Yeah,
It predates
if
the TV show.
if you look at the release dates of the books, the gap between them got longer and longer, and this was
And
years before the TV show was even a twinkle in somebody's eye.
I'm a grown adult, and I remember finishing Dance of Dragons in middle school. So
Mm-hmm. And I have jokingly said that at the rate things are going, Sanderson's going to finish that series as well as him having the credit of finishing Wheel of Time.
I mean, he's finished multiple series in the time it takes.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta know if Hunter x Hunter is gonna beat George R. R. Martin to the punch.
No,
Are
we on-
that one's
Speaking
an
of hiatus,
impossibility.
I mean,
Actually,
Are we on
wait,
too
no,
much of a
that's not
tangent, do you think?
an impossibility because George is gonna die before he ever finishes it. So
No, the
Yeah.
one you
is a
should be,
chance.
the manga you should be looking into as far as whether or not it's going to beat it to the punch is Detective Conan.
ooh,
the kid who never grows up.
Mm-hmm. But
That kid's been like what, 12 for like 20 something years,
yes,
30 years.
yeah. But now with that in mind, I realize currently I is mostly in this Google Doc. But do you guys plan on putting up some sort of rudimentary site, something on Itch or some other place? So
That would be the goal eventually. I know David is our resident CS whiz, and he hates the idea of it. Of just.
I have my personal bias against working with HTML.
But I do believe that whether it's an actual website or something hosted within another service, but we need something like that. There's also some really great tools we have that make running the game a little simpler, like auto resolvers for the hacking system and everything like that. That we would want that website to host. Like it's pretty hard to convince people to download files.
Oh,
so
did I mention the companion programs?
yeah, that's what I'm just bringing up here. Is
Yeah,
I wanted to bring that up earlier during hacking,
Yeah.
but
I
wasn't
wrote
sure
a
if you wanted to.
couple Python scripts to speed up a couple things while I'm jamming. I think there's one for damage calculation, one for automatically checking burst fire hits, and one for hacking. That's the one I use the most. But yeah, just handing people exe files is sketchy, and hopefully you can do better than that.
Yeah, your computer just popped me up saying, "Yeah, you got a virus, homie. This is not good."
Yeah, it did get virus flagged by Google Drive, but the angle I'm more seeing this question from is it's a fan game.
Mhm.
So based on that, I'm kind of feeling out like what's going to work best. For example, there's a Discord server that Strumon put up recently, just kind of for the community of their games, and the people running that have been really receptive and interested about the RPG. They started doing a series on like community spotlight, like fans that have done some interesting fan works, and this got to be the first of those, which was really awesome and a big honor. I appreciated it.
Yeah,
And that's
really
basically like
was nice.
that's basically the avenue right now, that community server of getting eyes on the RPG. That's going to be going on pretty shortly from now. But yeah, kind of operating in that area of like, ultimately this is not my IP, it existed before me. So, what works there? Let's say one of the worst timelines that I can imagine is one where I was made by Nintendo.
No hope for us then.
We'd be GG'd then.
Oh, you guys want to give it away for free? Nah.
Yeah.
So
Nah.
Nintendo doesn't seem to have any interest in trying to take down things like the Pokemon and Zelda TTRPGs that are out there.
That's true. Maybe the TTRPG space is something that you can survive in with Nintendo.
I think
it's a little bit more.
It's not the indie tabletop space isn't big enough for them to to really.
And they don't make anything for it either, so they just kind of don't care. I bet if anything got real big, they would suddenly care.
I think it comes down to if in trying to take that kind of thing down, they would spend more than they get out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, the kind of apprehension I was working from is a bunch of my friends are Pokemon heads, and I've seen them have Cold War level OPSEC when it comes to talking about ROM hacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. It's with Pokemon, it also has to do with like Japanese copyright law and something. I think they have to like very aggressively pursue copyright infringements for anything that's like anywhere comparable to what Pokemon is. So if it's like a trading card video game and they don't aggressively pursue it, that can be used as backing to take their own copyright away. Which is
it's a whole thing there
for them.
Although from what I've been hearing, their little fight with Pocket Pair has not exactly been going in their favor.
No, they've been losing that one.
Which I have a feeling within a year or so that's going to be settled. Which honestly should have been the thing to be done in the first place. because going to trial or anything close to that is not worth the hassle.
Yeah,
that's how it goes. Usually.
The thing is, Nintendo's a much bigger company, so I think maybe they thought they could kind of bully Pocket Pair, but Pocket Pair also just sold like billions of copies of their game, and they certainly have the money.
That and their deal. I didn't think it was a coincidence that Nintendo decided to do all the stuff they did right when Pal World makes a distribution deal with Sony, and Nintendo and Sony hate each other. They have hated each other since the 90s. Especially
that could factor into it. It could just be "fuck you, Sony, I hate you."
Yeah, because remember, the PlayStation was born out of a disc thing that Nintendo and Sony were going to be doing. Then the thing fell through. Then Sony practically embarrassed them with that whole $2.99 stunt.
Man, yeah.
That's one of the more infamous E3 moments where the Sony representative walks up on stage, says $2.99, then walks off and does not elaborate.
Legendary.
Mm-hmm.
All you needed to say.
Yeah. But with that in mind, what do you? I know we've got a decent amount of a page count for this, but where do you see the total page count of this thing going? Like 300 pages total?
I think that's pretty reasonable. In that amount of time, you get the classes laid out, equipment laid out, the explanation of how core combat works, and then page counts get a little bit funny because it's pretty common for a lot of games to split up into multiple books between player-facing rules and GM/enemies.
Mm-hmm.
Right. For the actual player's handbook, yeah. Bit above 200, around 300 is probably the look. A huge chunk of it is just taken up with equipment. That's not 300 pages of rules you need to know. A lot of it is options. Yeah, it's around that length for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can get that.
We'll have to see what it really ends up being after formatting passes and everything. In the end, we don't know what it'll be.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked at the actual page count of the game in quite some time because on our end for the the copies we use, we keep them in separate docs for logistical reasons. Like there's the Psi Powers document, the Core Combat document, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. But I will certainly look forward to seeing it. But with that said,
Awesome.
I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens here.
Yeah. Likewise,
It's
this
a good
has
time.
been
Yeah,
so
it's
cool
been a
to
fascinating
have everyone,
experience.
want to talk about the game.
Yeah, and anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Hell yes, brother. Hell yeah.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!
Thank you.